Death is what has made episodes 16 through 30 of Mobile Suit Gundam very brutal to watch. So many characters have died, which is no surprise since that appears to be Tomino's style. One of the tragedies is the fate of Ryu. Though sometimes his strategy to force people to listen is by hitting them, he at least can understand the type of stress and anxiety Amuro is going through. He helped a lot when it came to Bright. Bright had, for a very long time, never really tried to understand Amuro. He more or less used him as a tool to use and imprison as needed. It would be Rio that would wake Bright up to the reality that he is being immature. Still, Bright never really realized it until Rio's passing. Rio had already suffered heavy damage to his body. That still didn't stop him from defying orders and moving around the ship as the voice of reason for the troubled crew. Ultimately, he would help Amuro during a desperate battle by sacrificing his life. He rammed a robot with a plane and died. Fortunately, it gave Amuro the chance to fight back. This is where Bright finally gets some development. He finally realized the immaturity of his ways and the value Rio had as an advisor to him. Now with Rio dead, he felt lost and broke down on his knees. This is a new side of Bright, as he has now brightened up more as a person and is more level-headed. The second tragedy is Commanding Officer Matilda of the Earth Federation. She grew to respect Amuro, and Amuro developed a sort of admiration and even feelings for her. Unfortunately, she would die in battle after getting crushed by a Xeon robot's fist attack while in her own. Amuro would later meet Lieutenant Woody, who she was engaged to. He apologized to him that he was not good enough on the Gundam to prevent her death. Woody told him not to be so conceited. Sometimes it doesn't matter how good you are, because in war, many things can happen that are out of your control, even if you are a good pilot. Eventually, and to Amuro's horror, Woody will later die, sacrificing himself to attack the Xeon forces soon after. The third and greatest tragedy, in my opinion, is the death of Miharu. This is during a small arc where Kai decides to leave the White Base. He got tired of Bright and how everyone was giving him a hard time. He didn't feel appreciated for what he brought to the table. Also, deep down, he felt he had cowardice in his heart that he didn't think he'd overcome. Beforehand, he had to run into Miharu, who was selling locally made products for money. Her parents had died, and she was left alone to take care of her younger brother and sister. As a result, she became a secret spy for the Xeon also. It's not that she wanted to be a spy or to endanger the White Base. She had to do it simply to survive and for the sake of what's left of her family. This is a situation so many people find themselves in. They sell themselves for a paycheck, yet can you really blame them? Sometimes there is no better way. This is what I really appreciate about the whole story of Mobile Suit Gundam. The realities of war are often ignored because of how brutal they can be, and are often sugarcoated in the media. With this series, it does well in portraying many of these horrible realities, such as how it affects civilians' families. The constant deaths shown throughout remind the viewers of this brutality. And this is only an anime. One can imagine what real war is like unless having been in a situation where the law breaks down at your feet. With this, I want to point out that it is easy for people in such lazy countries as America to turn their heads away in shame and to try to isolate themselves from the reality of war. The truth is that there is no escape. To say you don't care about politics or war is to be a fish that says it doesn't care or want to be a part of the pond, because the fish is a part of the pond. If the pond goes, it goes. As the world, as is seen throughout the past few decades, continues to grow more and more violent, the worlds of people who want to live peaceful and quiet lives will continue to get smaller and smaller. Our destinies are all tied together. You can see the necessity of peace that must be kept alive through justice, in that the White Base has many young soldiers, such as Amuro, Sayla, Faraba, and the children. It shows that in a war between two great forces, out of desperation, even the young must participate. Honestly, you might feel safe with all your technology that does everything for you and consistently makes you more and more useless and skillless as a person. But the most violent era in human history, I think, is yet to come. I think Tomino feels this way as well. Back to Miharu. She meets Kai, as I said earlier, when she tries and fails to sell her products, and she befriends him. She tries to use them to get information from the White Base to report back to the Xeon. Kai, however, is a very intelligent individual for someone who, at many times, acts like a clown, and catches on to her after he accidentally finds her gun in her basket. As a result, he kept his distance from her, as needed, without her knowing. He eventually leaves and watches a battle between the White Base and the Xeon. As much as Kai tries to separate himself from it, he could not help but feel anxious and naturally inclined to fight. In that moment, he risked running through the explosions to join in and fight once again with the White Base. Miharu then boards on as a spy to gather intelligence for the Xeon. She manages to sneak on board, but gets caught by Kai of all people. Amuro would see them, but Kai convinces him that she is nobody important. Despite that Kai knows that she is a spy, he is a bit sympathetic towards her because he knows that she isn't necessarily a bad person. He knows that she's doing this for the sake of her younger siblings and decides to not really help her mission, but to allow her to stay on board without telling the crew about her. Eventually, Miharu finally decides to confront her conflicted feelings about being a spy. Having met Kai, she realizes she put someone that means something to her in danger, as well as the whole crew, and repents for what she has done. Still, Kai assures her that them being followed involved much more than just what she reported to the Xeon. Now, now having abandoned her role as spy, as seeing as though she is in danger during the battle itself, as well as her considering her responsibilities towards her younger siblings at home, she decides to fight alongside Kai. Kai didn't have a role for her until he was told the comrade he needed was busy on the machine guns. Because of this, he allows the inexperienced Miharu to board onto his gun cannon. Though she had little idea of what she was doing, she did her best to follow Kai's instructions and fired missiles towards the enemy. Due to an attack, they had to go to a different area in the gun cannon to keep firing, and she immediately volunteers and goes for it herself. Kai was worried about the risk, and yet there is no other choice at this point, since he had to be piloting it. Once there, Miharu finds the lever and sees the enemy coming towards them. You can see the rush of excitement in her face as she confidently fires a missile towards the enemy and blows them up. In that short moment, she looked as if she had just woken up her inner soldier and seemed ready to join Kai aboard on the White Base and possibly be a love interest. Sadly, when the missiles took off, she was obliterated by the firepower. After the fight was over, Kai, who had been very smug and sarcastic a lot of the time so far in the series, broke down in front of the crew and the viewers once he realized she had passed away. His development has come a long way, and he has definitely become one of my favorite characters in anime. In understanding him, you will understand Poplin and Dusty from Legend of the Galactic Heroes, since he seems to be the inspiration for them, especially in the immense amount of anime-only lines that were given to those two. Like I said before, Kai's voice actor eventually goes on to perform Poplin, which is another hint at the similarities. In the beginning of these episodes, Amuro deserted. He got tired of the harsh treatment of Bright and the others and left, taking the Gundam with him. It was a sort of soul-searching where he wandered the desert. As good of a pilot as he is on the Gundam, he had been very mentally unstable. Bright's harsh treatment partly played a factor in pushing him over the edge. It is during this time he meets the next two characters that are part of the next tragedy, Rumble Raw and Amon. One of my viewers pointed out in the last video that the writing tries to show humanity in the Xeon forces. It is very clear here. Amuro wanders to a bar in search of food and drink and happens to run into these two and their men. Hamon takes a liking to him and offers to treat him to a meal. Amuro tries to refuse and Ramba gets involved. Seeing Amuro's quick and bold personality, it appeals to Ramba. He also takes an interest in Amuro. Because Fraba was looking for Amuro when he deserted, she ends up getting caught by these Xeon forces and taken to the restaurant where Amuro reacts to her and gives himself away as a Federation Force soldier. Despite this, Rama and Hamon decide to let them go, which is this humane side of the Xeon that the viewers get shown constantly throughout the series. Eventually, Amuro and Ramba would meet in battle where they recognize each other. Ramba loses to the Gundam, and soon after, Hamon tries to take revenge but fails and dies as well. What is amusing about Amuro's combat style is that he is like a stampede. As desperate as the battle can get, he wills himself by sheer force to take down enemies. Even if the Gundam loses a foot, its shield or gets pierced throughout. Towards the end of episodes 16 through 30, Char returns. He is back because his pride is hurt. He needs to take down the Gundam. Even he admits it's a bit childish, and yet he is too prideful to just walk away. As he plans his attacks against the White Base, he and Amuro meet again. I really enjoy that scene where Char's song kicks in and he stands up and smiles over the Gundam, realizing that it is Amuro and that it is time. Amuro at the same time recognizes that this red robot has the skill of Char, and quickly goes berserk, yelling out Char's name and to try and take him down. I waited a while for this moment, as Char had not been in the series for quite a while, and it went as the viewers thought. Amuro is now so proficient at piloting the Gundam that Char stood no chance, even among a group, and had to flee. As for Char, I really enjoyed the wickedness of his character. I don't think I'd like to be his friend, even as a comrade. I like how his sense of humor is very similar to Yoshi from Texelize. And yet there is still so much I want to know about why Char is the way he is. The last that's touched upon is the relationship between Char and Sayla. They run into each other in the episode where the kids ran away and gathered the bombs. Sayla tells him briefly that she can't believe her caring brother joined the Xeon forces, while Char tells her if she would leave the White Base for him. Mirai happens to catch them for a moment, and though Sayla dismisses having talked to a Xeon soldier, Mirai begins to have her suspicions. Sayla herself has grown much, as not only a character, but as a soldier. She went from just sitting down and making reports to actively fighting in the battle alongside Amuro and actually taking down enemies. I think she has potential to become a great pilot, but what will happen if she crosses paths with Char? She already shows hesitation in shooting down enemies that she thought were him. My next video will be on the last few episodes, followed by the general analysis. I will be repeating some points in the analysis. These are just thoughts as I go through the series. I'm really looking forward to how this wraps up, as I am now near Mobile Suit Zeta Gundam. Thank you for listening.